Kicking off our list at number 10, plasma shield. You'll need your tinfoil hats for this entire video. I'll just start by saying that. Thumbs up and the tinfoil hats, both equally as important. Billions of miles from the center of our solar system, there's a wall. Big Game of Thrones space wall. Beyond this wall, what's over there? We have no idea, really. It's like the boundaries of an old video game. It's just blurry and it's mysterious. There's some sort of energy that protects us from deep space radiation. There has to be. And when NASA's twin Voyager probes passed through this exact region only 3 years ago, astronomers saw that the heliopause is a physical wall of plasma that deflects away the worst radiation in the cosmos. So yeah, a big gooey wall is protecting us from aliens and radiation. That's pretty cool. It's not a hypothetical anymore. The Voyager passed by recently. This shield may actually deflect about 70% of cosmic rays from entering our own solar system. I can't even comprehend the size here. That's just the start too. We're only finding out more things. James Webb is here to fuck shit up. Number 9, dead planets. When a star runs out of fuel, it can become a white dwarf. It's the skeleton of a star, essentially. Any planet that's orbiting that star at that point, it's toast. It's probably gonna get wiped out in the final growth spurt of the star. We expect this exact scenario to happen to us here on Earth. We're going to get swallowed by our expanding sun. Yeah, spoilers. Sorry. Either that or its intense gravity would pull us all into our own hot demise. Both pretty bad, but also pretty quick. Only a couple years ago, astronomers discovered an intact planet still orbiting a white dwarf star for the first time ever. This was impossible up until this point. This odd orbit sits 2,040 light years from us here on Earth, and the white dwarf system has its own Neptune-like planet that is slowly evaporating. It's disappearing every 10 days. That's a full orbit over there, just 10 days. Yeah, Happy New Year's, good game. Also, we're disappearing. That's lovely. It's depressing, but this brings light a new theory, that dead stars can actually host planets, even if it's only for a short amount of time. And then, you know, it evaporates us and swallows us whole and burns us. Well, one of the three. It's all gonna suck. Number 8, solar tsunami. I've seen this one here on Reddit a few times, and it's baffling each and every time. Some folk on Reddit actually believe that shadow beings live in the sun, and that this is actually footage of an alien leaving our sun. Solar flares look odd, but I don't think that it's a quick pit stop for aliens. You know, I'm not totally convinced either way. I don't know. In February 2019, researchers described a solar phenomenon called Terminator events, which, first of all, jarring name, Terminator, okay? These Terminator events are massive magnetic field collisions at the sun's equator. Now, subsequently, these collisions result in twin tsunamis of plasma tearing across the star's surface. It travels at 1,000 feet per second. It's pretty fast. It's kind of like the tsunami scene from Interstellar, only way worse. Totally way worse. Solar tsunamis could last for weeks at a time and may occur once a decade, so keep your eyes peeled. No, actually don't look at the star. Don't look at any star, ever for that matter. Especially not ours, or you'll go blind.
Number 7, white holes. Black holes are those magnificent space holes with a gravitational pull so powerful that even light can't escape its grasp once it passes the point of no return called the event horizon. We're not sure if there is a yin to the yang of a black hole, but there's a theory that white holes exist. Get your mind out of the gutter. Okay, so if a black hole sucks everything in at the event horizon, then perhaps a white hole would push everything away. Pretty cool to think, right? Well, there isn't much evidence to support this. I would like to personally offer the scientific community my theory because it's chetty. What if the Big Bang was created by a white hole, meaning the earliest of the universe's expansion could have been done by a white hole? Something to think about. You're welcome, science community. Just doing my part. Number 6, the Fermi paradox. In a nutshell, the Fermi paradox states that the known universe is massive. It gets bigger each day. With all those millions and billions of stars and planets out there, you'd think someone would have come by in their flying saucer and said, hello. Well, that may not be the case because, well, we may be it. Personally, I believe there is life somewhere out there, but somewhere is really far away. It's so far, too far to even think about. It really hurts to think about how far away it is. But the Fermi paradox argues that it would have happened by now, and the fact that it hasn't solidifies the scary and cold truth that we might be the only living and thinking creatures in a deep, dark, infinite void known as space. Man, that's heavy. Number 5, Planet X. Mercury, Venus, Earth, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, and sometimes Pluto. Depends if Neil deGrasse Tyson's in the room. He's not too cool about that one. He doesn't like that one. That's our little slice of cosmic life in the Milky Way galaxy. However, some scientists believe that there may be another large planet hiding out in the sun's orbit. Planet X, as it's been known to be called. Some think it's so large and mysterious that it has its gravitational effects even here on Earth, which is crazy because it's so far away. However, However, due to the theory stating its long orbit, we haven't seen it yet, or, it's not there to begin with. There's also that possibility as well. Yes, it's fascinating, but we know that there's other planets beyond our solar system, so it could be there. It's just really amazing to think about. Man, I love space. I love space stuff. Number 4, the moon landing. There are some out there who claim the moon landing never happened. It was faked, not real. It was a fugazi, says a guy with a tinfoil hat on his head drinking Mountain Dew in his mother's basement. While the folks who wear tinfoil have a point, there's tons of shady stuff surrounding the moon landing. There is, it's crazy. Especially to the average folks like you and me, it doesn't really add up. Missing recordings, footage being altered, light sources not matching up, and some claiming it was even done in a studio, which, hey, there's lots of magic done in the studio, like me right here, right now. Yeah. And one of their biggest claims to fame, or their big point, is that they never went back, which, well, that's just not true, because 24 US astronauts have been to the moon, 12 of which of those astronauts got to walk on the surface. The truth of the matter is, once you go up and pick up a few rocks, well, just not that special. It's little rocks on a big rock. Plus, with gas prices these days, can you imagine what it costs to fill up a booster rocket with space juice? Who's gonna front that bill? You guys gonna front that? I don't think so, man. That's too much money. Oh, hurts to think about. My wallet.
Number 3, Apollo 13. April 11th, 1970, Apollo 13 was heading for the moon. Now on board the ship was astronauts James Lovell, John Swigert, and Fred Hayes. 56 hours after takeoff, there was an explosion that damaged the shuttle drastically. Every system to keep the astronauts alive and well were all of a sudden no longer operational, and yes, they were all in space heading towards the moon, so worst scenario possible. The second oxygen tank thermostat had been damaged before the actual launch, and since it blasted off, these astronauts had little to no chance of ever coming home. There's actually a movie about this whole thing, and it's wild. You have to watch it. It's a Tom Hanks classic. No spoilers, but incoming spoilers. Their power supply, water, oxygen, heat, and light all cut off. They had lost over 30 pounds combined. It was horrible. It was just quite the event. The people at NASA's Mission Control Center had to get these guys home and do months' work of calculations in only days. Instead of going to the moon, they figured a way to use its pull and then return home as quickly and as safely as possible. So they did a little moon flyby. Said, oh, would be nice, see ya. Then they flew back, terrified this whole time, and then went back to Earth. Number 2, space animals. We often remember Laika, the space dog, and her 103-minute cosmic journey aboard Sputnik 2, but does anybody remember Abel and Baker? Why are we talking about these two? This was the American version of Laika. This was less than 2 years later, so it wasn't the first animal, so, maybe that's why we don't talk about it. But it was 2 years later, May 28th, 1959. The United States launched a female rhesus monkey named Abel and a female squirrel monkey named Baker. They launched them both into space. Now this mission only lasted 15 minutes and they both safely returned back home, which is great. You're probably all curious what happened right off the bat. The monkeys weren't injured from their trip, or so they say, although they were whipping through space at 10,000 miles an hour. I highly don't believe that. This was 1959. This was when space travel became the real deal. The impossible became possible. And it was all because of these animals right here. Abel sadly passed away after the flight in, normal ways, nothing to do with the actual flight itself. Meanwhile, Baker, she got famous. She was getting 150 letters a day. I'm talking fan mail. These ladies are icons, okay? Never mind Laika. Laika's time's over, okay? We get it. It was rough. We like it. Dog puns. That's why we're here. Hit that thumbs up for dog puns and also animals in space. Number 1, Runaway Bride. Back in September 2019, a star was detected at impossible speeds. It was just whipping through the cosmos. It was the fastest renegade star ever recorded so far. Hey, you wanna know how fast you were going? It was fleeing across the Milky Way at 1.2 million miles per hour. I'm trying to imagine that and I can't. Where did this even come from? Well, most of the time, these speeds come right after a supernova explosion, but after tracking the star's velocity and trajectory and going, it came from there, researchers figured out where it came from. It came from a black hole that's massive. It's hundreds of thousands of times the mass of our own sun, and this star just got completely sucked in and then it launched out at unimaginable speeds. That thing, like, is this gonna hit us? How many more are out there? This is so scary. I'm gonna get out of here right now. I'm feeling a little hot with all these lights. I'm a little scared. Now I'm thinking about space and now I'm anxious.
Starting off in our number 10 spot, we have organic material. Just this morning, we received a huge announcement from NASA. Of course, many of us are at least in some way familiar with the Perseverance rover that is currently on Mars digging around in the soil, and recently this rover has been searching at the site of an ancient river delta, trying to find any clues that might give us insight into the past lives of the planet. Well, that sweet little rover has made its most important discovery to date. A few recently collected samples have been confirmed to include organic matter. This means that the Jezero crater which likely was once the home to a lake that the delta emptied into, well, it would have potentially had a habitable environment about 3.5 billion years ago. These organic molecules are supremely important because they represent the building blocks of life, like carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen, and while this discovery doesn't just flat out confirm the past existence of life on the planet, it is one of the strongest clues we've ever received, which is absolutely unbelievable. In our number 9 spot today, we have the mysterious beam. Before I dive into this one, guys, please don't forget to hit that thumbs up button if you're enjoying this video so far. It does really help us out. Pretty recently, scientists explained that they captured a mysterious beam of energy that was coming from the star that is the closest known star to the sun, Proxima Centauri. This star is small and low mass and is located about 4.2 light years away from us. The thing about this star is that it has one rocky exoplanet that is 17% larger than Earth in its habitable zone, which would make liquid water a possibility on the planet. This planet's habitability has been disputed throughout the years, but this signal could be a sign that it may be even more habitable than any of us know. Scientists explained that the signal shifted while it was being observed, which mimicked the shift caused by the movement of a planet. They're taking extra precautions to figure out what exactly caused this shift in case it was some sort of a mundane source, but it will of course take some time to figure out, but it's all very exciting. In our number 8 spot today, we have Europa. One of Jupiter's moons, called Europa, has a red tinge to it, and in 2001, NASA scientists revealed that it's possible that alien microbes might be responsible for this red color. The surface of this moon is mostly ice, but it has been shown that it reflects infrared radiation in a really bizarre way. This means that something is binding it together, but researchers haven't been able to come up with the correct combination of elements and compounds to make the data that they have make sense. There are some bacteria on Earth that can thrive in extreme conditions and that also have that red and brown color, which could potentially be responsible for the color on this moon. The surface temperature might be too cold for them to survive, but the warmer interior might be where they are located. Some geological activity on the moon could then push them closer to the surface, where they are then flash frozen in place.
Number 7. Lost habitable worlds. Remember back in 2020 when we casually discovered phosphine on Venus? Yeah, in the middle of 2020 of all time, data from 40 years ago resurfaced, and it was documents from an old NASA mission where they may have overlooked this phosphine for the entire time. Yeah, whoops, didn't see that sign of life there for 40 years. Found it, let's talk. Yeah, this compound of phosphorus and hydrogen, this is eye-opening. So what's next? Well, NASA is interested, to say the least. They're currently preparing to launch 2 new missions to Venus to check this out. This is part of NASA's Discovery program that they're launching in 2030, so we still got a little bit of time. The Da Vinci Plus and the Verita S. Now the first one is a deep atmosphere Venus investigation of noble gases, chemistry, and imaging. Kind of a mouthful, but that's why we say Da Vinci. There we go. Then the second one, the second drone, will map Venus' surface and study its geologic history and hopefully get an understanding as to what happened to such a lost habitable world. Yeah, maybe there's humans there. Maybe we got old and we died and then we came here. Oh, number 6, carbon on Mars. It's one thing to have Elon tweeting about going to Mars, but when NASA talks about it, it's interesting. I get an eerie feeling. I'm like, oh, I kind of believe this a little bit more. Elon's Twitter is a little off the chain, so more than fair. They're old school, you know what I mean? They're like, we may have found carbon 40 years ago. Stay tuned. Papers everywhere. It's so NASA to have papers all over the place when you discover something. Well, in 2022, quite recent, just back in January, NASA's Curiosity rover measured carbon signatures on Mars. And we got Venus, we got Mars. What's next? Earth? Yeah, gotcha. Paul Mahaffey, principal investigator of the sample analysis over at Mars, he says, quote, "We're finding things on Mars that are tantalizingly interesting, but we would really need more evidence to say we've identified life." Okay, so we're close. We're definitely close. We need more evidence, not all the evidence. We just need a little bit more. And then we're finding aliens up on Mars, the big red planet. Imagine going to Mars with Elon Musk. Like imagine like winning a trip and that's what you get. I would pay millions of dollars to not do that. How does that sound? Number 5, asteroid redirection. This one happened like a week ago and it snuck up on all of us. It has Michael Bay written all over it. I was pretty excited for this project, I'm not gonna lie. NASA landing a craft onto a moving asteroid is one thing, but their asteroid redirection mission was next level. Their plan was for NASA to catch an asteroid using hypothetically a large space inflatable. And no, I'm not joking. And then they would move said asteroid to the moon where it would orbit. Further studies. Yeah, we're just gonna adopt a rock and then have astronauts land on it and then study the moon. I don't think this is gonna happen, but just last week, NASA landed a craft onto an asteroid. They just blasted an asteroid, so ideally, down the line, if we need to, we can blow an asteroid that's coming towards Earth off its orbit so it misses us. I don't know. That seems a bit more easy than a giant inflatable catching a rock and then letting it go over here. You know what I mean? Let's just blast the thing. I'm on board with NASA. Number 4, the second shortest spacewalk. Luca Parmentano, an Italian astronaut with the European Space Agency, faced what's possibly my new worst fear. I can't imagine anything worse than this. Here we go. It was July 16th, 2013. During a spacewalk on the 36th expedition to the ISS, Luca's helmet began to fill with liquid. Not water, but even worse. It started to fill with liquid coolant. Yeah, 0G coolant floating around inside of your mask. That's horrible. Water would be bad. Coolant, you don't want to breathe or drink this in. It's all bad. But being in space, that's a bit unpredictable, you know what I mean? The spacewalk continued for over an hour before Luca was back in the ISS and free from his suit of doom. He was fine, but this accident could have been a lot worse. The second shortest spacewalk in the station's history. Yeah, more than fair. Imagine drowning in like 0G. Horrible.
In our number 3 spot today, we have the UFO footage. Remember during the pandemic when there was that footage from the Navy that went viral where it captured some kind of UFO, but we didn't really have the time to freak out because we were all just like watching Tiger King and wondering what the hell was going on and when we could go outside again? Well, let's freak out about it now, because what the heck was captured on those videos? The US Navy released footage a few years ago where they had captured video of some sort of wingless aircraft that was traveling at hypersonic speeds. Of course, people are wary to believe that this is a true sign of alien life and alien visitors, but the thing is, we simply just don't really know what it is. We know it's not something that is known to us yet, so this definitely could be a sign of some sort of alien life. I guess we'll just have to wait and see. But hey, if the Navy's worried, so am I. In our number 2 spot today, we have the bacterial experiment. On Earth, most living creatures require oxygen to live, but the problem with a lot of planets is that there's far more hydrogen and helium. Last year, scientists decided to take 2 different bacteria. One was E. coli, which can be found in the guts of humans, and ordinary yeast, which is used in things like bread and beer. With these 2 bacteria, they tried to see if they could live in different environments. When placed within flasks that contained either pure hydrogen or pure helium, they still managed to grow, just at a slower pace. This evidence goes to show that there might be living organisms that we haven't found yet because we are looking in the wrong places. In our number 1 spot today, we have the Venus cloud. Last year in September of 2020, astrobiologists everywhere were excited and skeptical of some new potential evidence that had been found in the upper clouds of Venus. Firstly, can we just take a second to really think about how cool of a job an astrobiologist has? Anyway, the new findings were pointing to the potential of the presence of phosphine in these clouds. Phosphine is rare and usually a poisonous gas that on Earth is basically always met with the presence of living organisms. Venus hasn't really been the top of the list of choices for finding potential life due to its surface temperature and pressure and the sulfuric acid clouds, but this evidence could prove to say something otherwise. 2 separate telescopes were able to pick up the signatures of phosphine in a cloud that had a similar temperature and pressure to Earth, and while this isn't concrete evidence of space bugs, it will at least be a reminder that we should continue looking for life even in the most unlikely places. And hey, maybe it is space bugs.
Number 10, Soyuz 11. It was April 1971 when the Russians launched the world's first space station. 3 cosmonauts aboard said space station. They all spent 3 weeks observing, conducting experiments, dare I say, normal space station behavior. But their return trip, however, on June 30th, that's when things took a tragic turn. The spacecraft made a normal re-entry and landing, but when the ground team opened the hatch up, all 3 cosmonauts had suffocated. What happened? Well, it turns out a faulty air vent had opened 30 minutes prior when the descent module separated, and the cabin had actually depressurized. From that point on, the Soviet and the US space programs would ensure that their astronauts had to wear spacesuits during any phase of any mission where depressurization could possibly occur, just to be safe. I couldn't imagine how scary that would be. Also, just wear the suit all the time. It looks cool. It looks pretty badass. I'd wear the suit at home. Are you kidding me? Make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich wearing that thing. I'd walk all slow too. I'd really do it like I was in space. Number 9, Project 1794. This project was created with the goal to build sort of a saucer type aircraft that would be designed to shoot down Soviet attacks. This program was created in the 1950s and it was quite ambitious. It had some pretty, high goals. Some Tom Cruise-esque goals. If you've seen Top Gun Maverick, here we go. A team of engineers began trying to build a disc-shaped aircraft, but here's the kicker. They wanted it to be capable capable of traveling at supersonic speeds at high altitudes. They're gonna go fast. The documents about this project show that they wanted it to be able to travel at Mach 4, which is 4 times the speed of sound, and they wanted it to be able to reach an altitude of over 100,000 feet. Yeah, at the time, the project was estimated to cost around $3 million, which is around 26 million today. I acted like I thought of that, but I wrote it down. I couldn't do that math, are you kidding me? In the end, the project was canceled in 1961 because the craft failed all these tests and proved to be aerodynamically unstable, which of course would provide a whole slew of problems at a high speed, especially supersonic ones. Again, if you've seen Top Gun Maverick, this is a big waste of money. We didn't get it with this one. Number 8, too fast. We're at this stage in life now where Teslas are self-driving people to work, and I can't do it. I'm a 10 and 2 guy minimum, at least a 10, you know what I mean? You never know what technology might do, what choice it might make for you. Humans are still, you know, better than computers. I don't know, I'm scared. I've watched Black Mirror too many times, and it shows. On June 4th, 1996, Europe's Ariane 5 rocket launched successfully, but 30 seconds into the flight, the rocket flipped 90 degrees out of nowhere, and the onboard computer triggered the self-destruct mechanism just 2 seconds later. That fast. It just made that call automatically. Instead of a launch where a human would make a call to, you know, maybe self-destruct, it's just the computer making that call. It's not very ideal. That's terrifying. This rocket knew it was going too fast and it just dipped. The investigation revealed that some sort of old code wasn't properly adapted for the new Ariane 5. Old code for the 4 into new body equals problems. Yeah. In this case, the engineers had decided the specific velocity in question was too high to become a real problem. That was only true for the Ariane 4, so you'll live and you learn.
In our number 7 spot today, we have cyanobacteria. For around 2 decades, Dr. Richard Hoover has been studying meteorites that were found in Antarctica, and in 2011, he claimed that he and his team had found evidence of ancient bacteria from colonies that thrived on comets, moons, and other planets. The astrobiologist said they were able to make this discovery through the use of the most advanced microscanning technology in the entire world. Dr. Hoover sliced open these meteorites and discovered what they call the remains of cyanobacteria, also known as blue-green algae. This type of algae is said to have a unique quality and the ability to thrive even in some of the harshest conditions, which is necessary when talking about surviving the extreme environment that some other planets hold, as well as just space in general. Dr. Hoover said that while some of the bacteria he had found was similar to those on Earth, he also said that some of the others were completely alien. He said, quote, "Neither I nor other experts who have seen the evidence have any idea what these creatures might be. I believe these findings indicate that life is not restricted to Earth, but is broadly distributed, even outside our solar system." In our number 6 spot today, we have the radiation-proof bacteria. In 2002, Russian astrobiologists hypothesized that a bacteria here on Earth may have actually evolved on Mars. Deinococcus radiuranus is the most tough bacteria here on Earth. It can withstand even the most extreme conditions such as cold, dehydration, vacuum, and acid, but the craziest part is that it is virtually radiation proof. These little microbes can withstand several thousand times the amount of radiation a human can withstand, as well as more radiation than any other bacteria on Earth. You can even find this bacteria on the inside of a nuclear reactor. That's how radiation proof it is. Scientists did an experiment to see how quickly this bacteria could build up a stronger radiation resistance by zapping it with enough radiation to kill 99.9% of it, and then leaving the remaining 0.0% to repopulate before zapping it again and just repeating the process. It was concluded that it would have taken E. coli thousands and thousands of rounds to build up the same resistance that this hardy bacteria did in only 44 rounds. With this experiment, and based on the dose of radiation they gave each bacteria, it would take millions and millions of years to get even close to the amount of radiation they gave this bacteria in one cycle. Since Earth just doesn't carry that amount of radiation, it has led some scientists to speculate that since Mars is virtually now unprotected and receives extremely high amounts of radiation, these bacteria may have evolved on Mars and gained their resistance in just a few 100,000 years, and then they may have been flung off Mars by an asteroid and then brought to Earth on meteorites. In our number 5 spot today, we have Enceladus. Enceladus used to be thought of as basically just an icy snowball floating around in space, or as a small moon of Saturn with a diameter of 502 kilometers, but as it turns out, this small moon might hold some some pretty amazing potential. It was discovered that this moon has hydrothermal processes going on underneath its crust. To us non-scientists, that means almost next to nothing, but what if I said that that means that it just might have all of the requirements for life, and that it is becoming a greater possibility that we might find microbial life there. Basically, this moon has an icy shell for a surface and then a rocky interior, but between these two layers is a warm ocean, and this ocean is where scientists think life is most likely to be. This discovery came almost accidentally when the Cassini orbiter arrived to Saturn in 2005, and it found water plumes shooting out of the cracks in the surface of this moon, which made scientists realize that it just may be geologically active. Through more research and by flying the orbiter through the water, by the time 2015 rolled around, scientists knew that it was holding all of the keys to life. While this little moon was never the original focus of research, it quickly took over with its incredibly exciting potential. In our number 4 spot today, we have light shifts. In the latter half of 2015, a Penn State astronomer named Jason Wright explained that there were pretty erratic and spontaneous shifts in light that was coming from a newly discovered star. The star sits about 1,280 light years away from us on Earth, and these shifts were very similar to as if something was passing in front of our view of the star briefly before passing through. Scientists weren't able to connect this to any exoplanets or anything like that, which we could understand, and this is what led Jason to quite an interesting theory. He stated that it is possible that the shifts are caused by massive objects passing in front of the star in a kind of orbit, like an array of massive satellites or a similar kind of structure, like the type of thing that would be produced by an intelligent and civilized life form. Again, like many things, it's just a theory, but a very compelling one at that.
Number 3, Phobos 1. It was 1998, and we'll look over to the Soviet Union for this one. Back in 98, they launched the Phobos 1 spacecraft to study Mars's moons and even possibly land a probe on Phobos, the largest moon of them all. On September 2nd, 1998, mission operators lost contact with the spacecraft and they never heard back after. Yeah, just ghosted them and then drifted away into space. How rude, right? So what went wrong? What went awry, if I may? Well, software uploaded on August 29th, well, it turns out somebody missed a single character. Again, a little tiny error caused the biggest problem. This put the spacecraft into a steering test mode for some reason, which also deactivated the spacecraft's thrusters, so eventually it ran out of battery power and communication, and now it's just floating off into nothing. Just doesn't even do anything. Number 2, space workout gone wrong. Again, another new fear, I guess. Look, zero gravity, I can't imagine how hard it is to stay in shape while you're floating on the ISS. It's always funny to watch astronauts return, you know, they're all like sea legs, because they haven't been able to do a squat in so long. They haven't needed to actually bend over to do anything. No gravity. But it's vital for that return trip later that they're, you know, in shape. So they work out in zero gravity, but it has its dangers. In 1995, astronaut Norman Thagard was working out, getting his lunar leg day in, doing some knee bends, but while doing so, one of the straps snapped off his foot and flew upwards, hitting him right in the eye. Gravity or not, that's gonna suck. That's gonna leave a mark. Thagard had trouble looking at light from that point on, which when you're in space and you're an astronaut is really not ideal. Steroid eye drops healed Thagard's eye ultimately, but yeah, could have been a lot worse. Imagine losing an eye in space. You know who lost an eye in space? Thor. It's pretty bad. And finally, number 1, the Challenger disaster. There's a series on Netflix about this entire situation. I implore you to watch. It's hard to watch, but way more informative than I can be in, 45 seconds. On January 28th, 1986, barely a minute after the space shuttle lifted off, a malfunction in the spacecraft rubber seals that separates its rocket boosters, it caused a fire, and from that point on, everything happened so fast. The blaze spread up the rocket itself, and the disaster sadly led to the deaths of all the astronauts on board, including a teacher, Krista McAuliffe. Now, with it being minus 3 degrees Celsius outside, the engineering predicted some sort of failure, but NASA had already delayed this launch multiple times, so they wanted to press on and launch anyways. The disaster resulted in the temporary suspension of the space shuttle program, so let's hope we learned some things. Again, watch the Netflix series, much more informative than I can be in this video. Those are the top 10 historical space accidents that shocked the world. If you want a part 2, comment down below. We'll go, we got some history, medieval times, and now we're going to space. Let's do it. Let's mix it up.
Number 10, Flat Earth. Oh baby, it's bizarre, alright. Listen, I'm not gonna pretend to be a scientist or anything because, well, Truth be told, I'm the farthest thing from it. Really, if you looked at it, I'm nowhere close to a scientist. My science education goes about as far as high school, and even that's debatable because the teacher who was, well, teaching me chemistry was a newfie. Nicest guy on planet Earth, but I have no idea what the hell he was talking about half the time. Literally, I have no idea. But I learned enough to get by, so I can more than confidently tell you that the Earth is in fact not flat. That's right, not flat. There is no ice wall, there is no global conspiracy of all the world's nations. While we could probably agree that the government or everyone's governments are hiding something, it most certainly isn't the knowledge that the Earth is flat. They're definitely not hiding that. That's not what they're hiding. Lastly, if Earth is flat, then why are the other planets, moons, and other celestial bodies in our solar system round or spherical? We're flat, but everyone else is round and spherical? That just don't make any sense, partner. Number 9, Operation Paperclip. At the end of World War II, Americans were strolling through Germany one day and saw some really cool stuff. V2 rockets, to be specific. Ooh, cool. And they said to themselves, ooh, yes please, I would like some of those for myself and the rest of America, thank you. So they rounded up some not so nice gentlemen who were in a lot of hot water and brought them back to America where, well, they helped develop military technology, but more importantly, rocket technology. This was all thought to be a crazy story, but it turns out to be true. Who would have thought? All about space. Like Werner von Braun, for example. Not so nice German guy, but was keen helping NASA develop rocket technology that got us to the moon. Yeah, he did. That's how it happened. That's life. Operation Paperclip. Number 8, Venus and Earth. Venus and Earth are both very close in size and mass. They also are made up of the same composition, not to mention that we're neighboring planets. It's pretty cool. But if you haven't noticed, one planet is full of life, water, oceans, and has McDonald's. The other is a galactic wasteland with an atmosphere 100 times thicker than Earth, and it rains sulfuric acid on a hellish landscape below. Also, no McDonald's. I think that's my indicator for like a planet. No McDonald's? I'm not going. The running theory is that Venus used to be a sister planet to Earth, or just like Earth, and may have supported life with oceans and all the beautiful stuff we have. However, whether it was the inhabitants of Venus or a natural disaster, she is no more. So the theory is there was something there, now there's not. Strange. Yeah, that's strange.
Number 7, 2001 Genesis. I've personally never been skydiving before, and I don't think I could ever. My friends are talking about it right now, and I'm very quiet in that group chat, you know what I mean? I'm absent. Because I'm so worried about the parachute not working. I mean, that's obvious, but it's a very real problem. And one we'll sometimes see in NASA projects, so, you know, sometimes it goes to shit, even when it's NASA. NASA's Genesis spacecraft launched in 2001, but it's 2004 when it later faced issues. See, when the solar wind sample carrying probe was descended back into our home base, the parachute never deployed. It just crashed down. Remaining samples were all contaminated by the desert air. Other samples were just destroyed on impact. Obviously, it was a huge mess. NASA's failure report later on in 2009 revealed that manufacturers had incorrectly installed the probe's accelerometers into an inverted position, so the spacecraft thought it was going up when really it was going down. That's a big yikes. That's a big smash. It took 5 years to get answers, so I'm sure the parachute industry was low for 5 years because they're like, what happened over there? Number 6, Apollo 1. The first fatal accident in the history of US spaceflight. Here we go. It was January 27th, 1967. The first manned mission of the Apollo space program. During a simulated launch, a fire broke out in the command module of Apollo 204 at Cape Canaveral Air Force Station in Florida, ultimately and sadly taking the lives of astronaut Gus Grissom, Edward White, and Roger Caffey. Design flaws in the hatch door made it impossible to open in time to save the astronauts. It was a tragedy. Apollo 13 faced issues as well in 1970 when an oxygen tank failed. The crew was supposed to head to the moon, but had to obviously return once they were faced with these impossible tasks. But they still got home, so we'll talk about that later. Number 5, Mariner 1. July 22nd, 1962, an Atlas rocket launch was successful. Now, at first, NASA's Mariner 1 spacecraft had hoped to be the first to fly by Venus and get ahead of the Soviet Union in the, the big bad space race, right? Everyone wanted to be the first to launch and leave for some reason. After launch, it didn't take long for operations to go south. The rocket was unable to steer itself and it was heading towards a crash rather than, the cosmos. There's two things that could happen here. The rocket either lands into North Atlantic shipping lanes or it lands into inhabited areas, which is a no-go. It's kind of a lose-lose. There's no choice other than to self-destruct. Now, humans made this call. A little bit better than a computer just deciding to blow up, but humans made the $720 million decision, and it came splashing down minutes later. Turns out this was all caused because one programmer left a hyphen out of an equation. Yeah, a little hyphen. I forget commas here all the time, but no tragedy ensues.
Number 3, the multiverse. Ever been at the fork of the road and had to make a decision? Well, what if I told you every time you make a choice, you unknowingly create an alternate universe where you made the other choice? While this is just some mind-bending fun to think about by the campfire with your friends, it is actually a hypothesis that multiple universes exist just like in the Marvel movies. Pretty close, actually. Let's take one universe where there is Avengers, one where Thor isn't a gorgeous actor from down under, and maybe there's a universe where I'm good at math. Oh, I'd like to go to that one. That'd be kind of cool. I mean, who really knows? I don't. I wish I was good at math. I'd explain the quantum physics of it, but that's a job for smart me in another universe. You know what? It's probably universe 3.14 because of pi and math. That's smart. That's cute. Number 2, Roswell, New Mexico. Roswell, New Mexico, 1947. A UFO crash lands in the desert. Government agencies and the military quickly try to cover up what's happened. The crash debris is taken to Area 51 just to make a good story, and for years people claimed it was little green men and were being tested on at Area 51. What? Yeah, so much so that Roswell, New Mexico has now adopted aliens as their own identity. Pretty cool. And the conspiracy, it makes a lot of sense. Yeah, sure. However, many years later it was declassified that it was actually just a weather balloon and it was nothing to be thought of that much, and they're just kind of crazy. Although, that's what the government would want you to think though, isn't it? Oh, sure. Number 1, nature finds a way. Okay, this one is cool. So basically, we're all made of the same stuff. No matter which way you look at it, we're all made of star stuff. And if the conditions on another planet were similar to ours, then there's quite the chance, or the probability, that nature would find a way. What do I mean by that? Well, it means that life would most likely be similar on other planets like ours, and not weird tentacle monsters with green skin and weirdos like we think aliens are. So that means if a deer on this planet is a deer, that means a deer on another planet could be very similar to a deer, or at least maybe even the same. Oh man, life always finds a way. That's crazy. That's insane. That's a crazy theory. You could run into other us. Wow.